NFL YouTubers and NFL fans everywhere. This is Matt, the NFL Fanatic, giving you my Week 1 2024 NFL predictions. Well, look at the time of year. Back in February when I did my wrap-up video for the year, it is finally here. It is finally here that it is time for the 2024 NFL regular season to come back and kick off with a bang. I am so excited to be back doing these videos. If you all notice, I've done some redecorating. Shout out to my buddy Happin's Picks for riding all these great fat heads that are across the wall. All 32 teams are represented. The Broncos and Vikings are on the right side of the closet there. But it definitely makes the room look a little more vibrant, and it makes all 32 teams look well represented. So, thank you again, Moon, for the fat hits there. But it's so exciting to be back. And as I say every year, before I get into these videos, that when people watch my videos and hear my opinions about the content, I would just like to say that if you don't like what I have to say, or you disagree, or have anything negative to say about me personally, just if you don't want to hear what I have to say, you can always find somebody else to watch. Or the great thing about YouTube or all these video content creating sites is that you can create your own content. You can just find your cell phone or find a webcam, find a place, sit down, and talk about your own football opinions. And so, I'm always great for a constructive debate, but any significant personal criticism that you have about my opinions or that, if you have that much of a problem, don't watch my stuff or make your own stuff. I say that every year, and most of the feedback I get is always usually primarily positive, but I always like to say that every year, just for fans, just to realize that this is my channel, and what I do on this channel, it's a fun forum for football fans to talk about how the games are going and their own opinions about picks. And I try to help out with my picks as well at the same time. And I also did want to say that a little disclaimer that recently, from the last time I did record my last video, I have gotten now a part-time job, and so the video release dates will kind of change, and probably the length of the video moving forward from this week will be condensed a bit, just because I'd still like to get the videos out early on either Monday evenings or Tuesday mornings at the latest. So I just wanted to tell all my fans out there that I will still be doing my weekly predictions every week. I will still be giving some analysis. It will be just shortened down a bit. So just for time constraints, just because of what I have to do every day to get ready for work. I just wanted to say that up front for everybody out there moving forward after this week. But it is so great to be back. But I do want to say first that last time that we spoke, I gave my way too early Super Bowl 59 prediction, and that was between the Kansas City Chiefs and the San Francisco 49ers. Now, since the offseason has come and gone, I believe that my pick now, and I will keep this pick for the remainder of the year until the year ends, my new Super Bowl prediction now is right there in the back. You can see right under the Ravens logo, I have the Kansas City Chiefs playing the Detroit Lions in New Orleans for Super Bowl 59. I have the Lions making their first ever Super Bowl. I think they have a roster that is well-rounded, complete from quarterback to offensive line to skill positions to secondary to pass rush. They have a very complete and well-rounded roster. And I think with the Niners, though I would put the Niners still in second, I think the Niners' consistent struggles with their receiver issues, even though I do know that Brandon Ayuk just got paid the other day, that $120 million extension. They still have a big problem with the big silverback left tackle Trent Williams. still not at camp and still wanting a contract. And from what I just heard, he could miss some games, which I think, however, many games he misses is going to be a massive blow for the Niners to try to move around forward. But with those moves being said, I have taken the Niners out of that position where I had them initially, and I put the Detroit Lions in my Super Bowl 59 prediction before the year begins. Alright, so now it's time for my picks. Once again, I will be doing against the spread and straight up picks. This is my 16th year doing picks. This is my 11th year doing predictions on this channel alone. So again, for the 16th time, I will give you every straight up pick that I have, and for like the 4th or 5th year, I will also be giving against the spread predictions. My odds are provided by the great website called OddsSharks, and I usually will do these lines at the moment. I will not update them unless a significant injury happens before then, and I will usually update it, and I will provide a pinned comment for the update as well on that moment. So, alright, so let me get into the picks. So, on Thursday, the glorious, glorious sound of opening day, my team gets to have the fortunate or unfortunate distinction of getting to play the Kansas City Chiefs on opening night once again. And then when the Baltimore Ravens go to Kansas City in the opening night game, the Kansas City Chiefs are 3-point favorites in this game. As much as I would like to see the Ravens win this game, I do not think they will, just because I think the Chiefs, besides losing Hollywood Brown, they should be able to hold on. But I have Kansas City -3 and Kansas City straight up. Then on Friday, the first ever Friday game in NFL history to start the year in Sao Paulo, Brazil, when you have the Green Bay Packers playing the Philadelphia Eagles, though I hate why they put it in Brazil, because they cannot wear green, though they have the Green Bay Packers and the Eagles, with green being the primary color for both those teams. They're actually going to be wearing white and black helmets, or white and yellow helmets for this game, because they do not want to instigate any gang violence within the streets of Brazil. That's a whole different, geopolitical issue that I'm not going to get into. But with this game, the Green Bay Packers going to Philadelphia in Brazil. The Philadelphia Eagles are 2.5-point favorites in this game. Give me Philadelphia here, -2.5, and Philadelphia is straight up. Then the next game, the first Sunday game of the year, Sunday, September 8th, a day that I have been clamoring for months. It is finally close to being here. In the first Sunday game, when you have the Pittsburgh Steelers traveling to Atlanta to take on the Atlanta Falcons. The Atlanta Falcons are 3-point favorites in this game. Give me in one of my couple upsets here, give me Pittsburgh here +3 and Pittsburgh straight up. Then the next game, when the Arizona Cardinals take a west to east coast trip, going out to Orchard Park to play the Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills are 6-point favorites in this game. For the first pick this year, this is my first pick this year, where I'm going to take Buffalo here straight up to win, but give me the Arizona Cardinals +6. Then the next game, in a battle of two young quarterbacks and two young rising teams, the Tennessee Titans are traveling to this great hallowed field of Soldier Field to take on the #1 overall pick, Caleb Williams, and the newly revamped Chicago Bears. Very rarely do I ever take a rookie quarterback in their first start to win a game. From what I've seen from the Chicago Bears this offseason, what I've seen out of Caleb Williams in this offseason, I'm going to make an exception to this rule. The Bears are 4.5-point favorites in this game. Give me Chicago here, -4.5, and Chicago straight up. Then the next game, when the New England Patriots, in probably one of the more lopsided games of the entire weekend, or in my opinion, the most lopsided game of the entire weekend, when the New England Patriots go to Cincinnati and Paycor Stadium to take on the Cincinnati Bengals, the Cincinnati Bengals are 9-point favorites in this game. Give me Cincinnati here, -9, and Cincinnati straight up. Then the next game, in a AFC South battle between the new emerging face of the division and a young upstart team that is really hoping their quarterback can stay healthy, when the Houston Texans travel to Indianapolis to take on the Indianapolis Colts, the Houston Texans are 2.5-point favorites in this game. Give me Houston here, -2.5, and Houston straight up. Then the next game, in one of my favorite criticism games of the week, when the Jacksonville Jaguars of East Florida go to Miami to take on the Miami Dolphins of South Florida, where you have two of the 4 highest-paid quarterbacks in the league in Trevor Lawrence, and Tua Tagovailoa playing in this game. The Miami Dolphins are 3-point favorites in this game. in the battle of this game, I think William Lawrence gains more of the criticism, which I think is kind of fun for me. That'll be fun, seeing Trevor Lawrence get criticized once again. The Miami Dolphins are 3-point favorites in this game, giving the Miami Dolphins here -3, and the Miami Dolphins straight up. Then the next game, when the Carolina Panthers travel to New Orleans in a NFC South tilt to start the year, the New Orleans Saints are 4.5-point favorites in this game. Give me New Orleans here straight up, but I'm going to take Carolina +4.5. Then the next game, in the cruddy toss-up game of the week, two teams that have no high expectations, and there was a reason why I had the Giants and the Vikings on that part of the wall there. Those four teams that are on that wall, I do not think we're going to be pretty relevant teams outside of the picture. The only other team, the Carolina Panthers, are up there on that one side there if you can't see it. But in the battle of the Vikings and the Giants, two teams that I don't think are going to have any aspiration at all, or they're going to be bottom 7 teams at the least. The Giants might be, in my opinion, I believe, this is one of my hot takes of the year, or this is one of my first takes of the year, the New York Giants, I believe, will have the number 1 pick of the 2025 NFL Draft, and Brian Daboll should be fired, and I believe Joe Shane, for what he produced on Hard Knocks, should be fired as well. But anybody has any questions about that, about the Giants, let me know. I'm glad to deep dive into that a little bit further. But in this cruddy toss-up game of the week, the Vikings at the Giants, it's going to be entertaining because both teams are very bad and awkward in this spot. I'm going to take the Minnesota Vikings here. The Vikings are 1-point favorites in this game. Give me Minnesota here -1, and Minnesota straight up. Then the 4 o'clock games in the battle of the AFC West, when the Las Vegas Raiders, in the first official game for Antonio Pierce, go to Los Angeles and SoFi Stadium to take on the Jim Harbaugh-led Chargers for the first time since back in the late 90s when he was the quarterback of the Chargers. The Chargers are 3-point favorites in this game, giving the Los Angeles Chargers here -3, and the Los Angeles Chargers straight up. Then the next game, when the Denver Broncos, the Bo Nix Denver Broncos, who is going to be the first Broncos quarterback with the first rookie quarterback to start for the Denver Broncos since 1983 with John Elway. And Bo Nix is definitely not John Elway. And Sean Payton is definitely not Dan Reeves, he's probably better than Dan Reeves, but I digress. But the Denver Broncos are going up to the Pacific Northwest to take on the Seattle Seahawks, led by first-year head coach Mike McDonald, the former Baltimore Ravens defensive coordinator. In this game, though, the Seattle Seahawks are 5.5-point favorites in this game. Give me Seattle here to win straight up, but I'm going to take Denver +5.5. Then the next game, in a very awkward game, America's game of the week, Tom Brady's debut in the Fox booth. The Dallas Cowboys are going to Cleveland, take on the Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns are 2.5-point favorites in this game, and for the life of me, I do not know why. I know the Browns have a very talented roster. They had a bunch of injuries. They have the two-time coach of the year, Kevin Stefanski. They have Deshaun Watson, who is fully healthy, it seems like, for the first time in about a couple years. There's no suspensions. There's no baggage. There's no other investigations looming around him. His own personal character, you can criticize that or question that. That's totally fine with me. But, for the first time, the Browns have a functional set like that way. And they're playing the Cowboys, who, at the end of the day, they still have all the talent there. There is questions about, is Dak, is Micah going to be there long term? Are the Cowboys finally going to blow it up for the first time and be as bad as they were post-Aikman before they got Romo? I think that is the point they are thinking. But I just think in this game, I think this is an easy win with the points. You take Dallas +2.5 and Dallas straight up. Because remember, the Browns don't have Nick Chubb, but I'm taking Dallas here +2.5 and Dallas straight up. And then the next game, when the Washington Commanders in the Jaden Daniels era starts in Tampa, taking on the reigning 3-time NFC South champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tampa Bay Buccaneers are 3.5-point favorites in this game. Give me Tampa Bay here, -3.5, and Tampa Bay straight up. Then the last two games. The Sunday night game is a rematch of Wild Card Weekend from last year when the Los Angeles Rams go back to Detroit to take on the Detroit Lions. The Lions got their first playoff win in over 30 years against the Rams. That was such a great atmosphere, such a great game, and such a great feeling for the Lions. And the Rams, look, the Rams are a good squad. The Rams have a talented roster in their books. And I will probably, this might be the weird hedge pick you might question, but I am going to take the Detroit Lions here to win straight up, but give me the Los Angeles Rams plus 3.5. That's a weird number to kind of hedge, but I do think it could be a field goal game just because I trust what the Rams have. I think the Rams are going to be a good roster and a playoff team. And finally, the Monday night game when the New York Jets, once again, a year later, Aaron Rodgers is back on the football field. He's going back to his childhood favorite team in the 49ers, and he gets to play Leonard Floyd again for the 49ers in a big Monday night spot. Hopefully he will last more than 4 plays, because when he steps on the field for the New York Jets, that'll be the 5th play he has ever played with the New York Jets. He still hasn't completed a pass for the New York Jets either. But they are playing the San Francisco 49ers, who have gone through a very up and down offseason, especially with the Brandon Ayuk conversation. But getting Brandon Ayuk back, having Debo there, having most of that roster set, the Trent Williams thing will be a big factor. But I also think the other factor that people completely forget about the Jets is Hassan Reddick is not there, and I will talk about that when I talk about the games. But in this game, give me the San Francisco 49ers here, minus 3.5, and the San Francisco 49ers straight up. All right, it's time for my thoughts, quick thoughts on each game. The Kansas City Chiefs over the Baltimore Ravens. This is a game to me that I just, as a Raven fan, I know the Ravens, we brought in Derrick Henry. We re-signed Justin Madubuike. We have Lamar still there. We brought in Tez Walker. We still have Mark Andrews. We are still a very good and competent team. But we also lost Geno Stone. We also lost Patrick Queen. Marlon Humphrey's getting another year older. I know we have Kyle Hamilton, who is one of the best safeties in the league. The issue I have is the Chiefs are going into this spot really with not that many flaws, especially with the big news that Rashee Rice is going to be eligible to play because the NFL is not going to interfere in the suit or in the investigation to his car incident until it's over. So he is eligible to play. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I just heard today, he will be on the PUP, but he was their backup running back, and this will probably be the last year he's with the Chiefs, unless he just keeps taking veteran minimum deals to stay with the Chiefs. But in this scenario, the Chiefs don't have nearly as many holdouts. Chris Jones will play in this game. They still have McDuffie. They still have Karlaftis. They still have Travis Kelce. They still have a very good offensive line. They re-signed Creed Humphrey to a massive center extension, and they still have that man, number 15 in red, Patrick Mahomes. And remember, in this series, in the 5 games that Mahomes and Jackson have played each other, Lamar Jackson has won one time. And that was because of a literal risk of going forward on 4th down, that if John Harbaugh did not have that much faith and commitment, the Chiefs could be technically 5-0 against the Lamar Jackson-led Ravens. Do I think the Ravens, with how they're playing, can they run it effectively? Can, Zay Flowers, Andrews, Stanley, Lindenbaum, all these new offensive line. We also have a new offensive line coming in, new right tackle, new right guard from the draft, especially one guy that could not play last year due to Achilles injury. I forget his name, but he went to USC last year, the 7th round pick. I think the Ravens can put up a good fight. I think it will be a good game, but just looking at what the Chiefs have, knowing the kind of consistency they have in most spots, knowing that Patrick is Patrick and he will have more weapons. He will now have Xavier Worthy as well. I just think the Chiefs hold on and grind out another tough victory. I think for the Ravens in this game, this is an important game for the franchise, or for the season, to where I think winning this game will matter. I know Chief fans out there, they're going to say, hey, we lost to the Lions last year, and it didn't matter in the end of the day. And so if the Ravens win, I get that. But I think as a Ravens fan, and I would tell any Ravens fans out there, if we lose this game, in my personal opinion, what is the point in the season? If we can't beat the Chiefs, and for the 5th out of the 6 times that Patrick and Lamar have played, what is the point in playing this season unless the Chiefs get knocked out? Which I guess there is that chance, and you never know what can happen throughout the year. But if we have to play the Chiefs again in the postseason, losing to them again. Does anybody outside of super blind and moronic Raven fans that just will not concede that Kansas City is better than us, or they have their number, does anybody give us a chance? Does anybody give us a chance to win that game if we don't win? Okay, so again, I think the Chiefs fans, no matter if they win or lose, no matter how the game goes, they're not going to care. Because I think they're going to play well unless, a big injury happens. For us, this game does matter. But I would say to every Raven fan out there, understand that losing this game would basically put you at a plateau, in my opinion, for the season, because nobody is going to care how far we get now until we get into the postseason and if we can crack that red wall that is the Chiefs. And if we at least beat them in the opener, at least we know that we can at least put a crack into that. If not, if it's still a solid steel red wall, then I think basically for me, in my opinion, like the Ravens will win a bunch of games. We can win a few playoff games. We can get to the conference championship game again. But if we run into the Chiefs again, we're not getting the Super Bowl, and we have to, in my opinion, start making some questions about the future of John Harbaugh as the coach of the team, or we really have to start looking at Lamar Jackson in the sense of that guy is a phenomenal regular season quarterback, but he's just Dak Prescott with MVPs, and that's essentially what that is. He's Dak with MVPs. Because if you took the MVPs and put them on Dak, Lamar is Dak, and Dak is Lamar. So, but that's why I like Kansas City or -3 and Kansas City straight up. The next game, the Philadelphia Eagles over the Green Bay Packers. This is a game to where when I look at what the Philadelphia Eagles have done, they have done a tremendous job re-bolstering this team in terms of the offensive line, in terms of re-signing Mailata, in terms of giving Lane Johnson another year extension, in terms of getting Cam Jurgens another extension, in terms of re-signing A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, in terms of getting Mitchell, the cornerback, and Cooper DeJean in the secondary, bringing in Vic Fangio, bringing in Bryce Huff, getting rid of Hassan Reddick in that contract issue, getting Kellen Moore the offensive mind, and I think the Philadelphia Eagles going into this year are the third best team in the NFC, and you could argue with the Trent Williams factor, they could be as high as second in my opinion. But the Eagles have done a really good job, and I think with their schedule, they basically can run the table, or you can say they could run the table. I don't think they go 17-0, but they could win every game on their schedule. And I think the Eagles should have confidence in that. And I look at the Packers, and I go, the Packers really didn't. The Packers doubled down on Jordan Love. And again, kudos to the guy. Look, the Packers, for over 70 years have not started a rookie quarterback. And it seems like for the third time in the last 33 years, once every 11 years, they have been able to find another franchise quarterback. It is incredibly impressive how they have gone from Favre to Rodgers to Love in a pretty much seamless transition. However, giving that man $55 million a year, it's just because it's a small sample. And I'm not sold that he will be able to elevate his game to justify that deal just because of the small sample. It wasn't even like it was the whole year he played well. It was literally about 10 games. There were the games against the Vikings where he looked poor. The Raiders game, he looked like absolute crap. He threw 2 horrible interceptions to Robert Spillane. He got Jimmy G off the hook. Do people remember that happened last year? And that is the one thing I have with the Jordan Love. Again, he finished out hot, and the Packers are, they love home-growing their quarterbacks. I just look at this Eagles and Packers game, and I go, the Eagles should be able to run the ball more effectively. The Packers receiving core, they really didn't add anybody that much more effective. The Packers did bring in Josh Jacobs and Xavier McKinney, but losing Bakhtiari is significant. Just because I felt like, again, even though his situation was more offensive line based, I think that the Packers, they really, they stayed stable, but I don't really think they moved the needle for me to think that they were going to take the next step. And I don't personally yet believe in Jordan Love to elevate his game enough with the receivers he has around him, with Jacobs and McKinney and that defense, that he can maybe take that next step against an Eagles team that's prepared, motivated, and looks better and more consistent, on paper. But I would tell every Eagle fan out there, don't sleep on the Packers here either. Like, just because, I think the Eagles, are the better team, I've heard from a lot of people in Philadelphia, like, oh, they might just roll very easily. And it's like, I'm not so sure about that. They're Lee Corso, not so fast about that. I think the Packers can put up a good game. They have Reed, they have Wicks, they have Jacobs, they have McKinney, they have Kenny Clark, they have Rashawn Gary, they have Jair, they have Stokes. They have a roster and a good team that can compete with anybody. And I think the Packers can put up a fight. I just think it's going to be up to Jalen and Kellen Moore in that offense, and Vic Fangio with that defense, especially with that secondary, to limit the Packers' receiving core, because I think Josh Jacobs will have a tough time getting a lot of traction into this new system against the Eagles. Should be a good game and a good test for both teams. I think there is more pressure on the Eagles because I think the Eagles have a higher expectation. But the Packers, if they can put up a good fight and Jordan Love can show that he can play with Jalen Hurts, that's a good step to moving forward in their next week. So that's why Philadelphia are -2.5. Philadelphia straight up. The next game, the Pittsburgh Steelers over the Atlanta Falcons. This is a game to essentially, it's a coin flip, and I am genuinely going with that I believe Russell Wilson, from what I've seen, will outplay Kirk Cousins by a slight edge. I think the Falcons defense got tremendously improved by getting Matthew Judon, by getting Justin Simmons, by re-signing A.J. Terrell. Terry Fontaine really put a lot of good money into that Atlanta defense. But the Pittsburgh defense is still the Pittsburgh defense. They're going to have Joey Porter, Minka Fitzpatrick, Patrick Queen, Peyton Wilson, Cam. Both those defenses are going to be very good. And I think when you look at Russell Wilson and Kirk Cousins, you could probably argue that Kirk Cousins has been playing better over the last couple years. But also for the first time in a while, Kirk Cousins' weapons have been downgraded. And Russell Wilson is going into a system for the first time with a defense led in Pittsburgh. Can Russell Wilson play like 2013, 2014 Russell Wilson? Because that's what the Steelers are hoping for. And I think in this game, and again, it's basically going to be the offensive line play, and that's where you might argue to me, it's like, hey, Matt, the Atlanta Falcons have the better offensive lineman, they have the better running back, and Kirk Cousins should be able to stay on his feet. But remember, this is Kirk Cousins coming off an Achilles injury. So, with that being said, when you look at this Pittsburgh-Atlanta game, I'm taking Pittsburgh here because I'm going to trust Russell Wilson, and I'm going to trust Mike Tomlin to make a few more snap decisions and maybe cause one or a couple more turnovers on the Falcons than the Falcons will on the Steelers. And I think that's how I'm going to pick this game. Again, my head's telling me that I'm being a dummy, and this is like a 50.01, 49.99 game in my opinion. I know for a lot of people they might think Atlanta is a much better team or a better team than Pittsburgh. I don't see it that far off. I think it's more of a 50-50 split. And I'm going to go with Pittsburgh here because I trust Pittsburgh's defense. I trust Pittsburgh's coaching, and I think Russell makes a few more plays than Kirk does in this spot. And I think for the Atlanta Falcons, key story that you should watch out for, the Michael Penix, the Penitentiary will be open for Kirk Cousins to enter because of this Falcons stretch of games. If they start out 0-4, 1-4, you are going to have people out there from what you saw in the preseason in the one game that Raheem Morris idiotically only decided to play one game with Michael Penix. You are going to see the Atlanta Falcons fans clamoring for Michael Penix to get his starting spot and his opportunity to start with the franchise. So I'm just leaving that out there. But it should be a great game, very back and forth. I'm going to take Russ Tomlin and the Steelers defense to make one more play than the Atlanta team. But anybody taking Atlanta, I'm not going to criticize you. I think, like I said, my head is telling me from what I saw in the preseason, that probably is going to be the smarter pick. But I'm going to take Pittsburgh here just because I'm going to trust Russ Tomlin and the Pittsburgh defense to make one more play over Atlanta. That's why I like Pittsburgh here, +3, and Pittsburgh straight up. The next game, the Buffalo Bills over the Arizona Cardinals. This is a game to where the Buffalo Bills, this is me trusting Josh Allen to carry over a Cardinal team that's a bit on the rise. Okay? Because I look at the Arizona Cardinals and I say, okay, they improved their offensive line a bit. They brought in Marvin Harris, and they brought, Buda Baker's now fine with his deal. They brought in, they re-signed Trey McBride to an extension. Like, the Cardinals have some pieces. And the Cardinals, objectively, did not quit on Jonathan Gannon at the end of the year. Excuse me, they did not quit on Jonathan Gannon at the end of the year. But I just look at Buffalo, and I know, Buffalo lost a lot of defenders. They lost Micah, they lost Jordan, they lost Davius, they lost Matt Milano to another injury. They lost some of their offensive linemen. They lost Stephon Diggs. And this Bills team basically got stripped down, and it's basically Josh Allen, Keon Coleman, James Cook, and Deion Dawkins as the main offensive side of the ball. And then you have, AJ Espinaza. You have Vaughn still there. You have, younger corners. And it's very kind of shaky with the Bills. But in this game, I'm going to trust the Buffalo Bills with Josh Allen's dynamic ability that he can carry this Bills offense against the Cardinal defense that looked solid, but still didn't, I think, make a lot of moves to improve significantly. And I just think Josh Allen kind of carries the day over the Cardinals against a young Cardinal team that probably feels better where they are, but they're still in a spot to where I don't think anybody expects them to finish no higher than third in their division. Where the Bills, this is a big breaking point for them because essentially the Buffalo Bills may have to realize that it may be time to blow up this thing with Sean McDermott, and this Josh Allen run is over. And I will say this again, I've said this in previous videos. If I were the Buffalo Bills, if they do not make the playoffs this year, I would fire Sean McDermott, and I would talk to the New York Giants about seeing what they would want for Josh Allen. Because even though Josh Allen may be the most talented quarterback, pure talent in Buffalo Bills franchise history, and the second best quarterback that franchise has ever had behind Jim Kelly, I don't think the Buffalo Bills will ever win a Super Bowl with Josh Allen the quarterback. Just from what I've seen and knowing how he plays. So, I'm going to take the Bills here to trust to win, but I'm going to take the Cardinals here because I feel like the Cardinals have a roster that's a little bit more well-rounded than Buffalo. But I think Josh Allen's ability should be able to carry the day to win this game. And it's at home, and the Cardinals going out east. They haven't had a great history going out on the East Coast that often and winning. So, I felt like Buffalo here straight up at Arizona +6. The next game, the Chicago Bears over the Tennessee Titans. This is a game to where I am trusting this Bears team with Kyler Gordon, with the offensive mindset of Shane Waldron, with the talent they have. This is probably the most complete Bears team I have probably seen in my entire life. And it's probably the best offense I've seen the Bears have since probably the 2013-2014 Bears with Cutler, Marshall, and Jeffrey. I have that much confidence in that Bears offense. Is this Bear defense back in Dick the Bear defense? Absolutely not. But that defense, though, I think has a lot of solid talent. Eberflus is a good defensive mind, and they have talent on all assets of the defense that if that offense can hold up, that Bears defense, it's probably one of the, arguably in my opinion, the most well-rounded Bears team this franchise has ever had. Maybe outside of the 1920s if you're going to go back to the George Halas, Sid Luckman era, which no American, or very tiny portion of Americans were alive to see. So, that's why I'm going with the Bears here. Look, even though I will say this, the Titans sneakily have had a good offseason. Adding Tony Pollard, adding Calvin Ridley, bringing in Jamal Adams, bringing in Quandre Diggs, bringing in L'Jarius Sneed, still having Jeffrey Simmons, bringing in Tyler Boyd, bringing in a roster that they are going to give Will Levis a genuine opportunity to succeed. It is up to Will now to see what he can do with this team. And, I would say this in the context of the more the Titans compete with the Bears, I think that is more of an indictment on the Bears. Because the Titans are here basically as this sneaky AFC South team they're kind of becoming back into the white bread with butter category of like, if you play the Titans in a close enough game, you might get got by the Titans. But I don't think anybody expects Tennessee to have super high expectations. With the Bears, everybody is thinking this could be, again, he may be the golden bear. Not to be confused with Cal, but he might be the golden bear that leads this Bears team to the promised land for the first time since '85. And he is, I think, purely talent-wise, maybe the most talented quarterback they have ever had. And again, they have the offensive weapons. They have a defense to do it. I just would tell every Bears fan, this Titans team, besides the offensive line in a way, the offensive line still has a little bit of problems. This Titans team has a good amount of versatile weapons. DeAndre Hopkins' health is going to be significant due to the injury he suffered in practice. But I do think the Bears win this game based on having a more well-rounded and more explosive team and just better talent compared to the Titans in this regard. Should be a great game. Excited for both teams, but I'm taking Chicago. Very rarely do I take a rookie week one, but I'll take Caleb Williams and the Bears just for those reasons I mentioned before. That's why Chicago are -4.5. Chicago straight up. Next game, the Cincinnati Bengals over New England Patriots. The rear end kicking of the week. The Bengals, though they have had a bunch of offensive line injuries, though they lost Tyler Boyd, though T. Higgins is probably gone after this year, though they've had some secondary issues and Trey Hendrickson's had some problems, and they've had some of their tackles go all through the galore. They are still a better team than the New England Patriots, who are starting with Jacoby Brissett over Drake May, who have Ramondre Stevenson as one of their best, their best running back. The defense is going to get Christian Gonzalez back. They let Matt Judon go. They don't really have that much of a pass rush anymore. It's like Josh Uche, who's now going to be the primary pass rusher. Kyle Duggar is, a solid safety. But I'm looking at the Patriots and going, this is going to be a slow rebuild. And even through all the Bengals' troubles, I think the Bengals are just, if Joe Burrow can stay healthy, stay upright, they are still one of the better teams out there. So, that's why I like Cincinnati here -9, Cincinnati straight up. Sorry it wasn't this long because I just didn't think there was much to talk about in that regard. So, that's why Cincinnati here -9, Cincinnati straight up. The next game, the Houston Texans over the Indianapolis Colts. This is a game to where I believe the Houston Texans, on paper, should be considered the second best team in the AFC. They have a young stud quarterback in C.J. Stroud, gaining a weapon in Stephon Diggs, having Tank Dell, having Nico Collins sign long-term, having Joe Mixon, having an offensive line with Laramie Tunsil and Titus Howard, having a Texan defense with Daniil Hunter. This Texans roster and confidence is, I think, at an all-time high, and I personally believe this is the best Texans team this franchise has ever produced from top to bottom. And I just think with the Colts essentially are trying to have a weird poor man version of that, to where the Colts have a young quarterback in Anthony Richardson who has a lot of potential from what we've seen, but I'm just not sold on if the guy, can play that well, or he just seems too raw. And I think the problem for the Colts is the way they finished last year. They probably have higher expectations than where they should be right now. And I think that's unfair to Anthony, especially because he's only played about, 17, 18 career games as a collegiate and professional athlete due to his shoulder injury. And I think, again, can Richardson make some splash plays? Sure. But has he shown an ability from what I saw in the preseason to be able to protect his body and stay safe? No, I have not seen that. And I think the Colts, they have some solid defenders, but the Colts are very much like the Packers, to where a lot of the moves they made were to keep guys they had. They really didn't bring in any big new additional weapons that are going to tell me, oh, okay, the Colts are here to try to make an impact. I think, can they compete with the Texans? Absolutely. The Colts beat the Texans in Week 2 last year, 37-20, and that was, C.J. Stroud's second game. This time around, now with all that experience under his belt, with the confidence he has, I think the Texans are by far the better team in skill positions, quarterback, defense, and just where, things are going. And I just trust D'Amico Ryans as a coach over Shane Steichen. It's going to be a competitive game. It's going to be, hard-nosed, a bit, competitive, but I'm going to take the Texans here. trust the quarterback, trust the coach, trust the skill positions. And I just think with Anthony Richardson, he's still going to show some raw flashes out there that it's just going to take time to grow, but it's going to be a lot more time than, a lot more work in progress stuff than polished, consistent stuff, in my opinion. So that's like Houston here, -2.5, and Houston straight up. The next game in the quarterback chatterbox battle, my favorite, I'm taking Miami over Jacksonville, basically based off the fact that Miami has better weapons in their home. I look at both these teams and go, they're arguably the same. I think the Jags, the Jags and Dolphins, Chubb and Hines Allen cancel each other out. They lost Wilkins in Miami. Jacksonville, they brought in Eric Armstead, which would be a positive. But the Dolphins were able to keep Waddle and Hill together. They've also brought in Odell Beckham. They have Jonnu Smith at tight end, but Evan Ingram is better there. You look at the rosters and go, okay, you have some solid offensive linemen along the board, even though you have Teron Armstead and Austin Jackson for Miami. And in Jacksonville, you have Scherf and I'm trying to remember the one left tackle. I don't think it's Robinson anymore. But the Jags offensive line isn't as sharp. And I'm just looking at the Jags saying the moves that they made, and they brought in Mitch Morse. I did realize that. They did bring in Mitch Morse, which is important. And in that regard, I think Mitch Morse is a factor to where when that happens, Mitch Morse should help. But in this game, to me, it's very much Miami is at home, and they just have the better weapons, and I think that carries the day. Like, do I think Jacksonville, do I think Lawrence could put up a fight with the weapons he has? Sure. But it's not one to where I think if you're Miami, you shouldn't be concerned about what the Jags have. The only reason why I think people would take Jacksonville over Miami is saying you believe William Lawrence is a better quarterback than Tua. That might be on a pure sense you could make that point, but I think with Tyreek, with Moser, with all that speed, with Odell, I think the Dolphins just have too many offensive weapons that Jags secondary will not be able to hold up against. And unless Josh Hines Allen has a monster day, I think the Dolphins should be able to win this game in a, very high pressure. Basically, like I said, this is my favorite game because it's like, which quarterback do we get to crap on, more? And I will be perfectly honest, I am kind of rooting for the William Lawrence slander because I tend to think William Lawrence is more overrated and not the prince that was unpolished instead of the prince that was promised, that Nick Wright continually says. So, sorry, Jags fans, if there's any out there. Do I think you could win the game? Sure, but I think you are going to have a lot more questions about William Lawrence as the year goes on, and it could be the end of Doug Peterson's time as an NFL head coach as well, because he could be fired if this season goes maybe as badly as people think it could. So, that's like Miami here, -3, Miami straight up. The next game, the New Orleans Saints over the Carolina Panthers. This is a game to where, when I look at the Saints are still the Saints. A team that is just mediocre enough. They really didn't add anybody else that much more significantly. They moved a bunch of money to get under the cap. Like they always do. When they have the most cap, they're $92 million over the cap again going into the 25 season. And I just honestly think after this year, when the Saints do what they do, they should finally blow it up and basically cut liposuction all the dead cap. Get a triple bypass of cap removing cuts to let this team breathe and finally go on a rebuild that they should have done after 2020, if you wanted a personal opinion. Because for the last 3 years, this team has run a Ponzi scheme in the league, and they've gotten further back and further back as the years go on. They should let Derek Carr go after this year and try to let Spencer Rattler, who I think has some potential and was a little bit of a steal for the round he was taken in, take over and see what the Saints can do and breathe some new life into a franchise that maybe finally can start moving in a positive direction after all the bad, bloated, constant moving of money to, go to New Orleans. the Panthers, they fired Frank Reich, which I was thrilled with, because I wasn't a big Frank Reich fan. And objectively, with Frank Reich, I think Dave Canales, quarterback coach of Seattle, former Bucs offensive coordinator, this is a guy that's been around the league and he's earned this opportunity. And I think the Panthers, with the offensive line additions they've improved, bringing in Jadeveon Clowney, hopefully keeping J.C. Horn healthy, having Derek Brown. Like, this Panther team, I have some confidence that they're going to surprise some people and they're going to be more competent. But until I see it for the first time, when I saw it in the preseason, as much as I maybe want to take the Panthers, and I will be brutally honest, I would rather be the Carolina Panthers today than the New Orleans Saints, because the New Orleans Saints have really no future moving forward, because they're just stuck in this mediocre slide. The team I would compare it to is Seattle, but the good thing is the difference is Seattle at least has cap space and room, but they're just kind of in the same spots to where, and that's why I put them on that side by side there. Where you look at the Seahawks and Saints, they're kind of basically the same team, to where like they will never be bad enough to make a franchise-altering decision, but they will never be good enough that the cap for both these teams is basically a one-and-done exit in the playoffs. And I just think with the Saints, the problem with them is they have over $90 million in cap to worry about next year, and they'll probably try to move the money again. And I just think, again, like, until I see what the Panthers do, I can't pick them to win the game outright, but I have enough confidence in the Panthers, for maybe what I've seen, that I think they will at least cover the 4.5 points. And that's why I'm going with the Saints over the Panthers. I've seen the Panthers offense. I like what I've seen on paper. I haven't liked what I've seen on film or, in the game footage. But until I see it actually happen in a real game, I have to take the Saints on this one, just because I think the Saints have a better roster and more talent and consistency than Carolina does. So that's why New Orleans here straight up, a Carolina plus 4.5. The next game, the Minnesota Vikings and the New York Giants. I am taking the Minnesota Vikings here based on the fact that Sam Darnold is a better quarterback than Daniel Jones. The New York Giants offensive line, even though it was slightly improved, I don't think it improved enough. I think the Giants, they have Devin Singletary at running back. They had Darren Waller retire at tight end. And I just think with the Vikings, even though J.J. McCarthy is out for the year, and I do think, one take that I do have, Kevin O'Connell should be under more heat by the Minnesota fans and the Minnesota media. This is a guy entering his third year, and this is a guy that routinely, in bigger spots, I've seen Kevin O'Connell choke more and disappoint more than do well. And you could even make the point of Kevin O'Connell has been riding the seed of his offensive pants his entire tenure with the Vikings. When was the last time you've seen Kevin O'Connell come out to Minnesota and dominate a game? And again, shout out to Gio Knows. Love you, buddy. Best luck to your Vikings. But I know that the J.J. McCarthy crutch and injury is there. I hate that personally, because I feel like Kevin O'Connell should be under more heat, because he is an offensive mind, and people believe in Sam Darnold, a former number 3 overall pick. And Sam being the starter for the year is kind of a problem, because it's like they brought in Matt Corral, and they let Matt Corral go, and then they let Jaron Hall go, and it's like Nick Mullins. Sam Darnold and Nick Mullins are your quarterbacks. And you're part of the McVay tree. You need to show that you can win these games. And again, I think they win this one because I think the Giants just offensively and defensively are just an inept franchise. But I'm taking Minnesota here based off that fact. But I think both these teams are not going to be relevant by week 7 or week 8 this year, because I think that's how bad they're going to be. But that's what I would say to the Minnesota Vikings fans is look at Kevin O'Connell a bit more deeply and say, is this guy the right guy for the job? Because I've never seen the guy dominate a game, and you could essentially say he's been riding the seat of his pants his entire time with Minnesota. He has never had, in my opinion, a dominating game, and he's had more choke jobs and collapses and just sad play than from what I've seen, in any other coaches. So, but that's like Minnesota here, -1, and Minnesota straight up. The next game, the Los Angeles Chargers over the Las Vegas Raiders. I'm taking the Chargers here because even though the Chargers have lost a lot of offensive talent, they lost Mike Williams, they lost Keenan Allen, They, brought in J.K. Dobbins. They brought in Gus Edwards. Their number one receiver now is going to probably be Ladd McConkey or Josh Palmer or Quentin Johnson. And I do have concerns about that. This is a Jim Harbaugh-led squad. They kept most of the defense around. They kept Mack. They kept Bosa. This is a Charger team that, with the confidence Jim Harbaugh's coaching, I think they should be able to round and pound the Raiders in some dust. The Raiders, look, they've gotten a bit better. They brought in Christian Wilkins. They kept Pierce on at the job. Zamir White's now their number one running back. They have Max Crosby still. They have Tyree Wilson, who's going to have a big year, especially with Chandler Jones being out, and Tyree Wilson is going to have to now be the definitive second pass rusher. I think the Raiders can make some noise, but at the end of the day, I think they made a mistake by having Gardner Minshew be the starting quarterback, because I thought Aiden O'Connell, in the scenario that Antonio Pierce is in, he should have let the young kid play and seen what Pierce had. Seen what this kid had and develop it from there. Because everybody knows Gardner is a high-level backup, maybe the best backup in the league, but there's a ceiling with Gardner that's going to make the Raiders definitively, in my opinion, fighting for the basement of the AFC West once again. And for the Chargers, I don't know if they're a playoff team, but I think with the Chargers, with Harbaugh, from what you've seen, I think the Chargers should be able to round and pound and have Herbert play good play action this year, moving forward. So that's like the Chargers here -3 and the Chargers straight up. The next game, the Seattle Seahawks over the Denver Broncos. The Seahawks, again, like the Saints, I like Mike McDonald, former Raven defense coordinator, wish him well, but they're kind of like New Orleans, to where you're looking at the Seahawks going, yeah, you got Kenneth Walker, yeah, you got Zach Charbonnet, yeah, you got Noah Fant, yeah, you got DK, you got Tyler, you got JSN, you got Devon Witherspoon, you got some young talent, but is it going to make a dent in the NFC to where people are going to say, oh yeah, the Seahawks can win a playoff game, or the Seahawks are in Super Bowl condition? No, you actually have Geno out there saying, yeah, I think I deserve a contract extension. No, you don't. And if you got more money, you would be under more scrutiny for the limited or kind of average play that basically you have shown, throughout most of your career. Again, have you played better than Russ? Sure. You played better than Russell Wilson over the last couple of years. But last year, you and Russ were about the same, and I would personally say Russ played a little bit better than you did. Even though I do know that Geno did get hurt. You also had Drew Lock orchestrate a game-winning drive against the Eagles, for crying out loud. Fun fact, though, Pete Carroll never lost to the Eagles in his Seattle career, which is amazing. But, I digress. But yeah, in this game, though, it's like I just can't trust a rookie quarterback, even with Sean Payton and what I've seen on the Denver offense. They let Tim Patrick go with the Denver defense, even with Surtain and some of the weapons. I just can't see that rookie quarterback going into Seattle and winning that game. Could Bo Nix's mobility make some splashes? And do I think he has a higher ceiling than Geno? Absolutely. And that's why I'm going to take Denver plus 5.5 because, again, Bo Nix has been around. He's been around that area. So it's not going to be that crazy for him to go into Washington. He's played in, he played in Seattle Stadium just a little bit down the road. So he knows that environment personally from being a Pac-12 quarterback last year. But in that environment, with that pressure, I just don't think Bo Nix, pulls out the game. Could he do it? Maybe. But I just think, again, crazy spot, But I have Seattle winning. Home field advantage, more experienced roster, and I think Seattle makes a few good defensive disguises that gets Bo a little confused, and I think that gives Seattle the win. So that's why I like Seattle to straight up at Denver plus 5.5. The next game, the Dallas Cowboys over the Cleveland Browns. This is where I think the Cowboys bringing back CeeDee Lamb was the difference. I know Deron Bland is not going to be there, but Trayvon Diggs will be there, and I just don't think Jerry Jeudy is going to make that much of an impact, and the Browns don't have Nick Chubb. So if you have Nick Chubb and Deron Bland, and I know Chubb's a better player, I think this game, when it comes down to it, I think Dak will outplay Deshaun by a little bit. Even though I know Amari will be motivated to play his former team. I just think at the end of the day, the Cowboys understand the pressure of this situation. And I think the Browns, even though they have a more loaded defense, even though some of their defenders have been injured already, I think the Cowboys just grind out a win based off a little bit more consistent and higher ceiling play than the Browns. Could the Browns win this game? Sure. If Myles Garrett goes off and gets 3 sacks or more, yeah, they'll win the game. But that's why I like Dallas here plus 2.5 and Dallas straight up. Then the final 3 games, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers over the Washington Commanders. Very much like Denver, Seattle. Washington going to Tampa. I think Washington has a better chance to beat Tampa than Denver does in beating Seattle because I trust Jane Daniels a bit more. And I like what the Commanders have done offensively. Trading Jahan Dotson to the Eagles will be kind of a weird move that I won't get. The secondary is just a bit of an issue, and I think with the Bucs getting the talent they have, even though losing Carlton Davis or trading him to Lions, I will always question that. I think the Bucs in this spot should be able to grind out a win over Rashad White and then running back Cade Otton, Godwin, Evans, going against that Commanders secondary, which doesn't have a lot of promise to it from what I've seen. I know Dan Quinn's a defensive mind. He's bringing basically a Dallas Seattle type mindset, which I think, they will be improved. But having an older Bobby Wagner and just basically being one of your primary defenders, I think the Bucs hold on to get this win based off the better offensive line, the more consistent defensive stars, and I trust Baker to make a few more plays than Jaden. So at this spot, that's why I like Tampa Bay. That's why I like Tampa Bay here -3.5. Tampa Bay straight up. Then the Detroit Lions over the LA Rams. I'm taking the Lions here over the Rams because I think the Lions are just fundamentally one of the most complete teams. Though I will give the Rams their credit. I think their receiving core will be there. Byron Young and Byron Young and Kobe Turner will be okay for the Rams. So that might be one of my little hot takes. Is losing Aaron Donald is significant, but the Rams defense will be a top 15 defense with Kobe Turner and Byron Young at the defensive tackle. They're not going to have as much a drop off as people expect of Aaron Donald, which is crazy because people I know have continually overrated Aaron Donald for years. And when I mentioned that Byron Young and Kobe Turner should be able to do a good enough job to be okay, they're like, oh, it's still Aaron Donald. I'm like, wait, I thought you said Aaron was overrated and all that stuff. But, I digress. But I'm going to take the Lions here just because, again, I think Goff has better offensive line, more consistency, better weapons. And I think the Lions' energy in that Sunday night environment is going to be too amped up that I think there's no way I think the Rams go into that environment and lose and win that game in that spot. They were very close last time. And I think, again, the Lions should be able to grind out this game by the end. So that's why I like the Detroit Lions here straight up with the LA Rams +3.5. And lastly, the San Francisco 49ers over the New York Jets. This is a game to where I trust the Niners defense enough to hold up, to get to Aaron Rodgers a good amount. And I think Brock Purdy with CMC, with no Hassan Reddick, they should be able to grind and manage the game a little bit more effectively with the weapons they have. Even though, I guess the key thing will be, can the Jets pass rush completely obliterate Brock Purdy and the Niners offensive line, especially losing Trent Williams? If you take the Jets and that's your main reason, I fully get that. For me, I'm going to trust the Niners' overall entire roster is just a bit better than what I've seen out of the New York Jets, who will not have probably their best pass rusher on the field because they were morons and thought that Hassan Reddick was just going to play on a $15 million deal where everybody knew he wanted a contract extension for months. I also just think, again, the Jets I think they're not going to be able to run the ball effectively. Mike Williams is going to be an okay too, but I would take Kittle, and Ayuk over Williams and Garrett Wilson. And yeah, again, I think this is probably the most intriguing storyline game because everybody has expectation for the Jets and expectation for the Niners. But I think at the end of the day, the Niners being at home with Ayuk back, the Trent Williams thing will be massive. And I think the Niners offensive line, they can run the ball enough or just get Purdy the ball out incredibly quickly. They should be able to neutralize the Jets' pass rush and win that game off of that metric there. So that's why I like San Francisco here, -3, and San Francisco -3.5, and San Francisco straight up. So that is it for this week. Like, comment, rate, subscribe. Please check out the NFL YouTube Prognosticators page to see other great prognosticators like Half Moon's Picks, Gio Knows, Andrew Warren, all those guys and gals that make predictions just like I do. And like I said, next week the predictions will be probably a bit shorter in length. I just kind of went through like my own a bit shorter in length just because I want to try to get these videos out quicker and I just won't have as much time. But my plan is to get the videos out by either Monday evening or Tuesday morning at the latest moving forward. So that is it. So good luck to all players, coaches, teams, fellow prognosticators, and fellow fantasy players. And until next week, this is Matt the Fanatic signing off. Until then, everyone, so long.